happy. And thank you everyone that has joined. And that's, of course, what makes the class great, are the people. So thank you so much. So what did we do last week? Well, we were discussing how amazingly precious studying Torah is. And the advantage we're focusing on was the bond, the absolute interwoven, seamless, I don't know where one starts and the other stops, of our minds containing, so to speak, the thoughts of God as they are in Torah, and how God's thoughts are containing my mind as well. And we discussed that at length. And we focus on how special specifically Jewish law is. And that's why we don't only learn to know what to do, because a lot of Jewish law is not applicable, but we learn it anyway. Because if we want every aspect of Torah to give us this connection with that aspect of God's will and wisdom, it's not only the content that's relevant, though the content, of course, is very important, but it's the connectivity. My mind containing and being contained by this aspect of God's will and wisdom, by this aspect of God's will and wisdom. And that's why we learn Maimonides, and much, much, much of what we're learning is not practical today. We learn law. We can learn law that's not practical in our lives, but that's one level of reason for study. But in terms of this one that we're focusing on here, in this chapter, we are going to focus on 3 amazing special qualities that only happen in Torah study. That's chapter 5. Fast forwarding, I think like chapter 23, we focus on another amazing advantage of Torah. And then in chapter 37, we have another 3. So over these chapters, there are 7 really critical points of how Torah gives us something that nothing else gives us. And it's so worthwhile and so worth studying Torah. But so far, from the 7, again, 3 here, 1 in 23, and another 3 in 37. From the 7, we have 1. This unbelievable bond of being contained and containing God's wisdom in our minds. So just to continue with that point and then progress with it to the next space, to the next advantage, we are on the 2nd page of chapter 5. We are about 8 lines from the top. And I'm going to go back a little bit just so the flow should be clear. What we were saying was that when someone studies a law, as it's laid out in Mishnah, as it's laid out in Talmud, as it's laid out in the later or earlier sages, in any, what we call the Paiskim, this person is grasping, is encompassing in his mind the will and wisdom of God. That we know no thought can grasp God, not his will or wisdom, only exclusively, there is a way you can grasp God. Remember, that was the opening thought from Elijah, from Eliyahu, how the chapter opened. No thought grasps you. And we're like, no thought understands you, maybe? What's this grasping business? We don't grasp with our brains. But now we are understanding the point. We can't grasp you, but through Torah we can. But we do grasp God. We grasp his will. We grasp his wisdom, which means we're grasping him. What is engarbed in the laws that are laid out before us, in the Shulchan Aruch, in the code of Jewish law, in Talmud, in Mishnah, in the later and earlier sages, our brains grasp God. And also, his intellect is engarbed in them. The chapter opened up saying a quote from Elijah, from Eliyahu. No thought grasps you. And then we said, no thought grasps you? We don't grasp with our thinking. We should say no thought understands you. But Elijah said that very deliberately, very precisely, because what he's saying is the inverse is true. Normatively, of course, nothing grasps you. We can't hold God. But through Torah, we do. When we study Torah, we are grasping literally God's thoughts, God's will and God's wisdom is being grasped, is being held in my brain. And that's the point the Rebbe is emphasizing here, that we said nothing can grasp you except, but we can. There is a way in the engarment, in the laws that are laid out before us. Simultaneously, as we said, we're digesting him. And that's why the fusion is absolute. We were just reading inside this concept about this incredible bond, and the Rebbe is going to go on now that this applies specifically when we are learning Torah, as versus any other commandment, including reading the words of Torah. There's a commandment to read the words of Torah, but as I just explained, it's not happening then. And this is a wondrous, awesome, limitless, special quality. Did you hear all those words the Rebbe just said? Now, again, this is not me talking. I could talk like this. This is the Alter Rebbe who spent 6 weeks thinking about one letter, a V, and Miley Yisera, additional, Gedoyla, great, Vinifla'a, wondrous, La'en Kates, limitlessly wondrous. The Rebbe is saying, guys, if you're not super excited about this concept, you're not getting what I'm saying. This is unbelievable. Asher b'mitzvahs yedias haTorah v'asagasa, which is uniquely and only available in the commandment of knowing, of studying and grasping Torah. I'll call ha-mitzvahs maisias, supreme beyond any action commandment. V'afilo mitzvahs ha'tluos b'tibor. And this is supreme over commandments of speech. And not only the general commandments of speech, like making a blessing, like prayer, even over the commandment to speak words of Torah. So the Rebbe here made a little hierarchy pyramid for you. There are many ways to rank serving God. Here we're going from most external to most inner. Commandments of action, commandments of speech, speech of Torah, and on the top of this pyramid, the highest point, the mitzvah, it's a commandment to study Torah, right? This is the commandments. This is the pyramid. Action, speech, speech of Torah, studying Torah. Now, there are other ways, and obviously within Hasidic thought itself and within the Tanya itself, everything is contextual. In certain situations, there's nothing greater than action. Obviously, everything has its reason for being. Everything has its service of God. But if you're looking at this advantage, the fusion, the oneness, you and God that we can't separate, where does one begin and the other end? It's so absolute. Nothing gets you as absolutely one as Torah. And the more external the commandment is, the less that oneness is there. So therefore, on the bottom of this pyramid is action commandments, like eating kosher, very important commandment. Dressing modestly, very important commandment. Giving charity, supremely important commandment. The commandment in the whole Talmud of Jerusalem is charity. Very important, but more external to you, and therefore slightly less one, you and God. A more inner commandment, more inner than action, is speech, right? Speech is already something more from within you. So prayer, when we say Psalms, well, actually Psalms will be Torah of speech, so that wouldn't be here. Prayer, blessings, before blessings, after blessings, blessings in various situations. We bless a lot of times in serving God. That's more intimate an expression than charity, even though charity is very, very important. But it's still not God digested in you. It's an inner power, but it's not a digesting of God. And then the Rebbe said, I'm even going to up the hierarchy. I'm going to add a level we don't usually say. We usually say action, speech, thought. I'm going to put in another level, another rung in the ladder. Speaking words of Torah. Ooh, that's even higher than the regular speech of prayer or blessings, because here it's Torah itself. Now, is it a commandment to speak words of Torah? If it's Torah shebichsav, written Torah, Tanakh, the 24 books, the scriptures. So if somebody was reading Talmud, no clue what they were saying, but reading Talmud, is it a commandment? No, it's not. It's not the commandment of learning Torah. You have no clue what you're saying. It's not the commandment of saying words of Torah. It's not scripture. It's not the written Torah, Torah Shabbat. It's neither of these two commandments. Or going back to what I was saying about chitas, we have Tehillim. Tehillim is Psalms. So on one hand, and this is something very powerful and beautiful about Psalms, about Tehillim, that when we say Tehillim, we're saying it as a prayer. It's a very powerful prayer. And the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Lubavitcher Rebbe, says, nothing draws down God's compassion and kindness like Psalms. And if we knew what it did, we would just say Psalms all day long. I think about that often, and not all day long, but it always pushes me to say a little more because, oh my gosh, if I only knew what I was doing, I for sure would do more. Psalms is scripture. It's Torah Shabbat. It's the written Torah. It's one of the 24 books. But I'm saying it without knowing what I'm saying. Am I doing something? Well, on one hand, yes, because the Jewish people have taken that book of scripture, Psalms, as a prayer to God. So you have prayer. But am I doing something in the realm of Torah? Yes, because it's Torah Shabbat. It's the written Torah. It's scripture. It's one of the 24 books. So you are accomplishing the commandment of saying words of Torah. Am I accomplishing learning Torah? No. Are the advantages I'm talking about in this chapter happening? Unfortunately not, because you're not learning it. You're not understanding it. But it's a great, wonderful, amazing thing to do, and keep doing it. If you were, as we said before, davening your chitas, those that know what I mean, you're saying the verses of Chumash, of Torah, without knowing what you're saying. You're saying the verses or the section of Tanya without knowing what you're saying. Are you accomplishing something? Of course you're accomplishing something. The Rebbe wants you to say chitas. So it's a great, wonderful thing. It's a bond of connection, hiskashrus, between you and the Rebbe. The Rebbe says it's a minhag Yisrael Tairahi. It's a Jewish custom. A Jewish custom is like law that we've got to do it. The Rebbe very much wants it done. So it's wonderful. But in terms of the technical commandment, you are fulfilling the mitzvah of reading words of Torah with Chumash, because that's scripture. You are not fulfilling the mitzvah of learning if you don't know what you're saying. You are not fulfilling either of those mitzvahs when you say Tanya, because it's not scripture. So you're not learning because you're not understanding. You're not learning. It's not reading because it's not scripture, but it's a wonderful thing to do because the Rebbe wants to say chitas. Estherina.
Yes. So what if somebody is understanding the Tehillim or studying from a sefer about what the Tehillim means?
So that's learning Torah. Of course, that is learning Torah. So if a person, when they're saying the Tehillim, they're thinking about it, they're understanding what it means, and they're thinking about what it means, they're digesting the context, all the concepts, the construct, everything involved in the Tehillim, of course. Can we say Tehillim and both have the advantage of prayer and the advantage of reading words of Torah and the advantage of studying Torah? In theory, 100%. It was so sweet. I was speaking with a woman I'm close to who's beginning her journey. And of course, she can't read Hebrew. And of course, she can't understand Hebrew. And she was saying how it takes her so long to say Psalms because she's reading this transliterated verses. And then she has to look under the line to understand what all those words mean. And it's like very draining. And I was saying, well, it's okay if you don't understand what it means. You can even just say those words. Those words are very holy and very powerful. You're just reading either the English or the transliterated. That's very, very, very beautiful. And if it's too much for you to do both, it is fine. You do not have to do both. But yes, obviously one could think about the meaning. The best way to do that really is actually what I think Estorina was suggesting, which is independently, not when you're saying chapters of Psalms, to study and get the concepts of the Psalm, of the chapter. And then when you're reading it, to have in mind the meanings that you already learned before. And that way you could sort of have both advantages. Absolutely. Anyone else? Any other questions? Any other thoughts on this? Malki?
Hi. Okay, so a question I had is, say you were like reading, I guess, different sections in the Chitas of the day, and it just happens to be there's that day you're not able to fully understand it in that moment, but could you be you are really intrigued and connected, even though you're not fully understanding the idea, say in the Tanya of the day or in Chumash of the day, and then you go back afterwards and like go through it after you've done completed daily study of Chitas, or no?
You're always allowed to go back and relearn something.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying because sometimes I'm just trying to say is that there could be days you're reading through Chitas, you're really trying to understand like what it's saying, like you're connecting, but you're not understanding
So
because
as I'm
comprehension wise.
so as I'm saying, maybe I wasn't clear. Even if you
Mhm.
weren't even doing everything you're saying and you just were like pressured for time, we're not going to give it the time it takes to really learn it, and you just read it through, I think it's still a wonderful thing to do because this is something the Rebbe wants us to do.
Mhm.
So, yes, it's even better to understand it, and it's even better to understand it fully. But, and if you're not going to understand it and you're going to do it, that's also wonderful. In terms of, I'm not sure exactly what you're asking. If someone partially learns something, doesn't really understand it, and then later comes back and understands it, at that point, are they fulfilling the mitzvah of Torah study? Of course.
Yes, that's the
Understood it
question.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. And that could be true for many people that study Torah in the framework of Chitas or in any other framework of study, that you learn something and you don't exactly understand it, and you're thinking about it, and then, oh, now you understand it, or you understand it more. And that's part of all of our process of learning. Sometimes we learn many things on an annual cycle. So we come back to the same things we learned before, and we could sometimes say, oh, now I understand this. I never got it before, and now I'm getting it, or this detail I'm getting, or this Rashi I'm getting, or this nuance in the Rashi I'm getting. That's always very exciting. And Torah is limitless. So every much we understand, there's always more to understand. So it could always be fresh and exciting. So the Rebbe here was saying that if we look at all the ways of serving God, the action commandments, the speech of Torah, but beyond all that, and unique is the idea of learning Torah. And again, as we're saying, we fulfill the mitzvah of speech of Torah only with Tanakh, only the written Torah scriptures. The mitzvah of understanding Torah is, of course, all of Torah. We fulfill it only if our lips are moving and our voice is heard. When you are reading Torah with your eyeballs, you didn't fulfill that commandment either. Just like in prayer, your lips have to be moving, your voice has to be heard. You have to turn on your voice and move your lips to fulfill the mitzvah of saying words of Torah as we read the words of Torah. Generally, the truth is also when we're learning, we're supposed to be moving our lips and hearing our voice. It's hard for some of us because we're not used to learning that way. Just as for many of us, it might be hard to pray that way, right? A lot of people pray with their eyeballs, or they know they're not supposed to do that. So they pray with their lips, movement of the lips, but they don't hear their voice. According to Jewish law, your voice has to be audible. Even in the Amidah, the Shemona Esrei, we're supposed to be very soft whisper so it doesn't disturb anyone else, but your ear should still hear it. That's prayer. And similarly, when we're studying, we're actually supposed to be moving our lips. We're actually supposed to be hearing our voice. That's hard. It's hard only because, for whatever reason, we're not trained to do it that way. So it's like hard for us, but it's really significant. And Chassidus speaks about the significance of that voice of prayer and that voice of Torah study and the power of that voice. Now, if one is deeply concentrating on Torah, then you're exempt from that. But I don't know if we always get to that deep concentration in Torah, but when we're generally learning it, both, of course, when we're speaking it, we must, but even when we're learning it, our lips are supposed to move and our voice is supposed to be heard. But again, at that point, if it's the commandment of studying Torah, all aspects of Torah, I'm able to fulfill his commandment with, as versus the commandment of speech of Torah, which only is with the written Torah, Tanakh, scriptures, and nothing else. So the Rebbe here, again, what he's highlighting is, wow, this is so special. This is amazing. This is unbelievable. Because through all the other commandments, Shebedibur Maisa, of speech and of action, HaKadosh Baruch Hu malbes es hanefesh. God is engarbing the soul. He's encompassing the soul with the light of God from her head to her foot. I didn't know souls have heads and feet, from her top to her bottom. But this is the third advantage. I said there were 3 advantages in this chapter. This is the third one. When we have a knowledge of Torah, when we're fulfilling the commandment of studying Torah, like I hope everyone is fulfilling now, because I hope everyone is focusing and understanding. If you're not understanding, ask questions. Beyond what we said earlier in this chapter, that the mind is engarbed in God's thoughts and God's wisdom. The wisdom of God is inside of him. That which the intellect can grasp, can encompass in his brain, in his thoughts, what is intellectually comprehended by us, that which he can grasp from the knowledge of Torah, each person according to his intellect, and his power of comprehension, of grasping the orchard, all the levels of Torah study. What is the Rebbe adding here? Is the Rebbe saying what he said before? No, he's transferring to the next point. The Rebbe is saying, until now, when we were discussing the specialness of Torah, we were thinking of Torah in its intellectual bond with God. Your mind contains the thoughts, the mind of God, and the thoughts, the mind of God contains your mind. And from that, so to speak, brain to brain connection is that point of fusion, that point of oneness, that unbelievable oneness that nowhere happens except the infinity of God and your finite mind through Torah. And now the Rebbe is transferring to the next point. And the Rebbe is saying, and he's doing this by contrasting it with the commandments, that when you do a commandment, so to speak, God's not getting inside of you. God is surrounding you. When you study Torah, God's getting inside of you. And this is the point we were developing before, that when I take my hand and give someone charity, God's energy is surrounding my hand. And we can imagine this in some like sci-fi movie, there'd be all this like lights and colors. If we could see the auras, there'd be all these auras because my hand is surrounded by God's energy, because it's a hand giving charity, because my hand is now an extension of God's will. And if I'm praying, it's my eyes and my lips and my vocal cords and hopefully my heart and hopefully my brain. Again, all those colors, all those auras, it's all encompassing me, which is why spiritually, every time you do a commandment, God's light surrounds your soul. Just as when I'm doing the commandment, God's light encompasses the arm or the heart or the eyes or the brain. So God's light encompasses the soul. The soul has a new garment. It has something surrounding it. What does the soul need garments for? Well, garments are protection. And the soul in the afterlife, through those garments, is how the soul absorbs the rays of God's presence. Every commandment we do in this world is another garment to allow God's rays to penetrate us in the afterlife. It's like the most perfectly attuned, nuanced sunscreen that lets in all the healthy rays and blocks the rays we can't handle. So commandment by commandment, we're having more and more layers of what we can absorb, because anything is too big for us would blow away the soul. But what we can absorb, this allows penetration, this allows penetration, this allows penetration. So every garment is protecting and allowing the healthy rays, the rays created by that commandment, to surround the soul, that the soul basks in the light of the commandments it did in this world, plus all the commandments we do for the soul afterwards. So the soul is basking in that energy, in the glow of God. That's all outside the soul. That's all protection. It's wonderful. It's needed. It's a great thing for the afterlife. But the Rebbe says Torah does something very different. Because when you study Torah, said it's very sort of simple. The only way real study is happening is if you digest the concepts. If you don't chew them, break them down in little pieces, swallow them, can take them apart and put them together and make a new construct and see connections and all that stuff we do when we study, it wasn't called study. It could be reading, as we said before. It could be hiskashrus to the Rebbe, as we mentioned in terms of chita, but it's not called study. To study, we're understanding. We are breaking it down. It's becoming part of the inside of my brain. And therefore, uniquely, only when we study Torah, God's light gets inside the soul. It's the only way God's light is inside our soul. The Rebbe calls this the food of the soul, as we can understand. Clothing, right? We have clothing. Clothing surround us. It's very good we have clothing. They keep us modest. They keep us protected, protect us from the elements, protect us from inappropriate. There's many reasons why we want to have clothing. But no food? You have a closet full of clothing, but I'm not giving you any food? Commandment after commandment after commandment, your soul has all these beautiful garments. But if you are not studying Torah, your soul is starving. Your soul is weak. Your soul is like, And when you study Torah, again, not read it, when you're digesting, you're breaking it down, it's becoming integrated in your brain cells, you're understanding it. And for some people, it's a very hard process. They're like, I'm not brainy, I'm not intellectual, I'm not academic. Well, you got to learn Torah. Find simpler things to learn. You're allowed to learn simpler things. Learn Jewish law. That might be a lot easier to grasp than some other things. It's Torah. It's wonderful. It's food for your soul. Has anyone experienced this? Because people do. I'm not asking a question from planet Mars, that they feel weak in their relationship to God, weak. And then they learn and they feel they got energy again. They got life. They got vitality. Anyone remember a time when you hadn't studied for a while and your soul was getting weaker and weaker, and then you studied and you saw the difference it made that you studied?
Yeah, for sure. It's something that maybe isn't noticed consciously as a connection. Or if it is, it could be a light oh, I feel so much better after similar feeling to, oh, I feel so much better after I went to the gym. Oh, I felt so much better after attending that shiur. But it's deeper than that, I guess.
Well, that's really beautiful. It is not the first time I've asked that question especially if I'm teaching an advantage of Torah, like this type of chapter, because to me, this is the most basic and critical advantage and showing you the need for Torah. And it blows my mind to think of people religious people. They're serving God all day long. Their whole lives are serving God. But they're not studying his Torah. And their souls aren't getting fed. And Torah study is the only food for the soul. So as Serena says, she's definitely felt that. And again, some people definitely feel it, and some people maybe aren't as sensitive to this weakness of their soul. But I think we probably all are. We might just call it other things. So anyone else besides us, Serena, has had that experience where they sort of felt that weakness and then they studied something or they went to a class and then they felt revived, they felt their soul just got a boost.
I felt it. And you know what? The contrast between learning and also, we're not talking about davening and tehillim and everything going on in this crazy world. It's a balm for the soul.
It is. And it's a very needed balm for the soul because we
just go out of control.
Someone just sent a text, and the way the texts come now, either too small for my eyes to read. It was sent to everyone, not just to me. I did see the everyone's, but I was not able to read what was just sent because it's where my screen is, I can't catch it now. So I missed that, but I hope other people read it. I agree with you, Sarah. It is like, that's a really good way to put it. The world is crazy. Like some of the things that happened this week, I was like, it like really got to me. And I don't usually like get like that too fast. I really felt it like, and then I was like, God's running his world. It's all good. It's all God. It will all be perfect. And none of this craziness is going to happen because that would not be perfect. So I'm trusting God. It will all be his absolute perfect and nothing like what it seems. And yes, where do we get that strength from? From studying Torah. That's how we know it's all God. It's his world and he's taking care of it. So Sarah said she feels it. As Dorina said she feels it. My very strong assumption is that other people have experienced it. They're just not talking. And maybe some people haven't experienced it because they always learn Torah. So they never have that gap space to feel the hunger. Like you're always full. So you don't know what hunger feels like. And some people maybe don't always learn Torah and their soul is hungry, but they maybe never like connected the dots that way. They never understood the mood they're in as like their soul's weak. They might have attributed it to other things. And then when they study Torah, they might have like, oh yeah, that picked me up. I went out to class and they didn't like make that connection of like the Torah study just fed your soul. That's why you're feeling better. But it's really powerful. So now that we all know the secret moving forward, one, we don't want our souls to be languishing. We want to make sure our souls are fed. So we know the advantage of learning Torah. And I think what Malka was bringing up before was a very important point. That sometimes a person could really be trying to study and really trying to learn, but they just don't get it. And maybe that's another reason, besides all the other advantages Chassidus says, why it's good to learn something that is simpler. The Medrash says, Jewish law, things like your mind's going to grasp. That's Torah. Torah doesn't have to be mind-bending, really difficult, and I don't have an academic brain, and I'm pushing, but it's not happening. There's simpler things in Torah. It's still Torah. So really important to learn Torah. This is the food, and this is the only food for your soul. And obviously, if this is a food, that means your soul needs to eat. Like if your soul had no need for food, to make this big deal, as the Alter Rebbe is going to make for now till the end of the chapter, that this is a food for your soul. Well, by the way, my soul doesn't need food. So obviously, your soul needs food, and this is the only food for your soul. And when you're feeding your soul, feel good. As the Alter Rebbe says much later in Tanya, I'm doing this for you. You're getting fed. That's wonderful. And a well-fed soul has more energy to impact us, impact our lives, impact how we live and serve God. Malki?